when these cuts happen, we're not able to sort of dream big for our students.
Happening right now, Portland Public Schools taking feedback on its proposal to cut $50 million from next year's budget. It includes cutting nearly 300 full-time positions. Thanks for joining us for K2 News at 6. I'm Rick Azaway.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. This marks the fourth straight year the district has had to make major cuts. They say it's because of a number of factors, including what they say is inadequate state funding and declining enrollment. K2 is committed to going in depth on the stories that matter to you. Tonight, you'll hear from reporter Tanvi Varma about the proposed cuts at PPS. We'll tell you when you can weigh in on that plan. We'll take a look at how enrollment impacts state funding and explain how the PERS program comes into play, the Public Employee Retirement System. And Vasili Varlamos will join us live to look at the new bill that would overhaul the state's education funding formula. K2's Tanvi Varma joins us live tonight from Harriet Tubman Middle School, and that's where the district is holding an engagement session tonight for families. So what are some of the concerns, Tanvi?
So, Deb, according to the latest Oregon Department of Education data, Oregon students, less than half of them are scoring proficient in English and math. And so a concern is whether more cuts could make things even worse. Portland Public Schools faces a $50 million budget hole, and to fill it, it's proposing cutting 288 full-time equivalent positions.
I can't imagine how we get to 200 or 300 FTE cuts without layoffs of educators. But I do know that some of the cuts were cutting down counselors and other mental health professionals.
Parents are feeling the stress. For this Bridal Mile mom, it's just one blow after another.
Bridal Mile had to close last year for a day because it was too hot. It got over 100 degrees, so we couldn't actually be in class because there was no ACs. So I think what we feel is, here are these disastrous cuts, but we were already feeling like our schools weren't thriving in terms of the health and safety.
Here's a breakdown of the proposed cuts: 73 elementary positions, 24 K-8 positions, 45 middle school positions, and 65 high school positions. The proposal also talks about merging first and second graders where possible.
They already did that last year for our 4th and 5th grade learners, and we don't even have data on whether that was an effective switch to support their learning.
The district blames low legislative funding and dropping enrollment for the funding shortfall. While they didn't speak to us on camera, the chief financial officer says they're trying to keep cuts out of the classroom.
In recent years, PPS has tried to protect classrooms by first using reserves and making central office reductions. But with reserves depleted and enrollment projected to keep shrinking, staffing adjustments have become unavoidable. It's important to remember 84% of our operating budget supports staffing. That's why the majority of cuts end up meaning people.
And there will be more community engagement sessions like the one that took place here tonight. Then the budget must pass by July 1st. Reporting live in North Portland, Tanvi Varma, K2 News.
Tanvi, thank you. And again, the district does want feedback and will be holding meetings to let people weigh in on the cuts. Here's a look at the district's calendar for those engagement sessions. 3 will be held tomorrow at 3 different locations, with the earliest starting at 4:30. 2 more will be held next week. You'll also be able to find the list on our website at katu.com.
The district has been dealing with declining enrollment for the last decade. That impacts how much money the district gets from the state. However, how much it impacts the district is unclear. This chart shows enrollment since 2018. You can see it's been declining every year since then, from nearly 50,000 students in 2018-2019 to about 43,500 in the current school year. Overall, enrollment is down almost 12% since the 2016-17 school year.
And another pinch is the increase in retirement costs. The state requires public employers to pay a certain percent of employee salaries to the state retirement system. So depending on the employee, that is anywhere from 3.7% to 9% of the employee's salary for PPS. That's a new cost compared to recent years. So here's why. A spokesperson for the state says the district prepaid retirement costs for the last roughly 20 years. Starting this year, the prepayment expired. We've requested a breakdown of how much the district pays in retirement costs per class of employees. We're waiting for those records to get back to us.
Stick with K2 for continuing coverage of these proposed cuts. We'll be tracking the budget and the impact as it makes its way through the process.
This is a step towards that and ensuring that we are not, repeating the same cycle and expecting different results.
Staying with education now, 2 Oregon lawmakers are proposing a different strategy for how the state decides what it costs to fully fund public schools. The plan would move Oregon away from a decades-old funding model and could reshape how future education dollars are spent. K2's Vasili Varlamos is live in Salem for us. Vasili, this is more about changing how the state measures success.
Right, Deb. Those spearheading the effort say it's about redefining what kind of education a fully funded school should deliver to students, shifting away from yearly cost estimates to long-term student outcomes like reading and math scores to guide future funding decisions.
Every year we have this debate of what is the adequate funding for public schools in the state of Oregon.
That repeated debate is what's driving a new proposal aimed at changing how the state defines what it costs to fully fund public schools. The proposal would move Oregon away from a decades-old quality education model, which lawmakers have relied on to estimate school funding needs. State Representative Ricky Ruiz, one of the sponsors of the proposal, says an independent review of the commission that drafts the model raised concerns about how it's calculated.
We found on most of them that they were not following, respected and effective guidelines on how to calculate the quality education model.
Under this legislation, research would shift away from that commission to legislative research staff and nonpartisan outside experts. Ruiz says this is not about cutting or adding money right now, but redefining what a fully funded school looks like. Ruiz admitted that the definition is the biggest point of contention right now. Lawmakers raised concerns during an education committee meeting last week that the definition of a fully funded or, quote, standard school is too broad and could raise concerns about how schools would be measured and held accountable. Ruiz acknowledged those concerns, saying this conversation will likely continue past this upcoming session.
Bringing in other expertise into the table and making sure that we bring legislation that more than anything improves the outcomes of our children.
Now, Ruiz says they're already looking into an amendment to that proposal that would narrow the definition of what a standard school looks like. Now, discussions on that proposal and that potential amendment will begin when the legislative session begins on February 2nd. Live in Salem, Vasili Varlamos, K2 News.
Vasili, thank you for that.